Hi everyone, my name is Chloe, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be making a video around ethnic rhinoplasty and more broadly discussing plastic surgery in the context of race, gender and identity. I guess potentially it will be shaped from my perspective, my social position in the world as a Black woman, though of course my experiences does not represent all Black women's experiences. So please keep that in mind in this video. And yeah, if you're interested in seeing more content like this, please give me a like, subscribe, and please, once you've watched the video, do let me know what you think about this topic matter below. So if you've been on social media for the last maybe 2 to 3 weeks, you would have seen conversation around ethnic rhinoplasty and Black women specifically. So if you don't know what ethnic rhinoplasty is, it's essentially a field of plastic surgery where people from racially marginalized groups are having procedures done to their nose. It's basically like alterations done, right? And we know the conversations or the images that we visualize when we think about nose jobs for Black women. And it's interesting because I remember there used to be this TV show, I can't remember what channel it was on, but it was Black plastic surgeons who were doing plastic surgery with their Black clients. It was set in America, somewhere in America. And one of the conversations they had around different procedures, particularly on the face, is about preserving the characteristics of that person, right? And I find this conversation quite hard because of course race is a social construct, and we know that this whole idea of that there is features that are specific to each group can be challenged. But at the same time, I think what it is, right, is that these features are demonized and seen as undesirable when they are on a Black person, or when they are on a brown person, or someone that is East Asian, for example. So a lot of the procedures are preying on those insecurities within those communities. So if you think about the different procedures that are more likely to be done by insert group, it's all about European colonialism and how that has influenced how we view our features, is essentially what I'm saying. And we know that there is other factors involved as well. And I think that this is not to say that there are not other cultural expectations that influence what is seen as beauty as well. So for example, class, status, like all of that comes into play as well, right? And we are seeing that right now with expectations of how women should behave, particularly when it even comes to exercise or health, right? That whole field is extremely gendered, what a woman should do. And that whole conversation around Natalie B fitness and just how the gym looks in itself, it links to those gender essentialist ideas. I think a lot of this overlaps, you know, that there are such strict and rigid and suffocating expectations of women, which is also reflected in plastic surgery. And there are extremely young girls who are getting Botox and who are getting these procedures because of a pressure, but also there's that element of wanting to appear a certain way to preserve youth almost as well. I feel like That is a part of Botox for sure, I feel. But then I also feel like cosmetic procedures like that, it also is a class and status thing, right? So, for example, I think of like the Only Ways Essex and how it's almost like expected in that field to have some kind of plastic surgery or cosmetic surgery, to get lip fillers, to get Botox, to what's that one where it's like, is it buccal fat removal? There's all these expectations of now that you're in a certain space, how you should look. And if you want to get in that space, how you should look. I was having this conversation with my friend the other day. Rap for women. How are we as a society expecting black women who rap to look? Yeah, and there's all those expectations. I think there was that conversation where Nicki Minaj was talking about how she was in the studio, and this was before she got I'm not too sure if she got a BBL, but she definitely got some sort of butt enhancement procedure. They were making fun of her body, and you can see that there's almost like, is it really a choice when your success is reliant on how your body looks? It's not just about having the ability or having the talent, it's also about those patriarchal expectations of how each artist is sort of performing their sexuality for the male gaze, for a male acceptance, and what is seen as desirable from a black woman. To have some kind of enhancement, to be this sort of that imagery, right? And and that's why I really feel like you can't separate it from these systems. And we also have to keep in mind how dangerous surgeries like BBLs are. The risk, and that shows you, and I think it's important to like focus on that. If the world was fair, would people be taking that risk to get that done? Hell no, they would not be. So I think just on a whole, when it comes to plastic surgery, I really don't want to lose that human, that kind of part where it's really about understanding how brutal this world is to exist in, and the way that you are treated if you are considered ugly. And this is something that I think about a lot, because I can't sit here and act like, especially as a cis straight black woman, I perform gender, I do. And I think that there's so much propaganda around how women should behave, women should look like this. And I can't sit here, even as a black feminist, and say that that does not impact me, because it does, right? So I really want to get that across. And even when it comes to like hair politics and beauty politics for black women, it is exhausting. It is hell. It is hell. It is hell. Like, I feel that black women are always being pulled apart, commented on, oh, your wigs are like a helmet, how do you wash your hair? It's just always, I feel like I'm always under attack. I feel like a lot of the attacks that black women face is basically saying, you are not a woman. You're almost like mocking what is expected of a woman. That is the vibe. I think, do you see what I'm saying? Like, I hope I'm explaining that correctly. So I think that is part of why I want to have that empathy and want to emphasize that empathy, because for example, one of the creators on TikTok, to get back to the conversation, who got a nose job, people started to say that she looked like Michael Jackson and all this type of stuff like that. But again, if people did not face that racism, that bullying, that judgment, that misogynoir, would these surgeries be so popular? They wouldn't. With Glorilla also facing all that bullying around her nose, it's not it's unlikely that it was just through the internet that she faced the bullying around her nose. As a fellow big nose girl, like for me, that was the moment I really recognized that I was like, I feel like all of these procedures are anti-black. People were always making their noses smaller, right? And yes, people that want to say, oh, not all black people look the same, of course, we know that. Like, that was the whole racial science type thing in terms of this group looks like this group looks like that, was debunked in the 20th century. Cool, we know that. However, as I said at the start of the video, the issue is that when we have these features, how is it viewed? It's perceived negatively. And big features, particularly on black women, is perceived as masculine, right? So this is something I talk about in my videos a lot, about black womanhood and how these expectations to perform femininity in a very particular way. Not all of us want to be feminine, and because to be honest with you, I don't really view myself in that way, because it's a Western femininity. So I want to make that very, very, very clear. A Western European femininity is often the way that when we're having these conversations, that people are visualizing what a black woman should look like. And that is a part of the problem. I don't want to look like a white woman. Yeah, I don't want to look like a white woman. I'm good, thanks. I am a black woman. I've got a big nose. I've got big features, facial features. Like, that is part of who I am. And I'm definitely not the most confident person in every setting that I enter, but that's definitely something that I'm confident in. Okay, so I don't think on a whole, just to summarize the conversation around plastic surgery, that it can be separated from these systems. Because I was also going to do a TikTok video around this as well, right? When you look up the history of plastic surgery, it can also be a form of cultural assimilation, changing your features to literally survive. And there were so many conversations around this, particularly around the Jewish community. And I want to be very specific here, because of course there's not one way to look Jewish. And when it comes to Jewishness, if you've learned a bit about anti-Semitism, you've probably come across, particularly in the history of Europe, how this sort of caricature in how Jewish people were portrayed, right? Particularly around facial features. And as a result, right, that is part of the history of ethnic rhinoplasty. And I'll put the source of the paper that I sort of read about this, and it's called The Jewish Nose and Plastic Surgery, Origins and Implications by Beth Preminger. And it was just interesting how, just to use the terminology of the text and just paraphrase it, how what was considered a Jewish nose was seen as, let's just paraphrase it, it's seen as, what term would I use for this? But it shows you how certain features are associated with bad character, with poor or lack of morality, not valuable, but then through through changing opportunity and beauty and potential mobility, right? So as a big nose girl myself, I know that my nose is not the beauty standard. I've always known that. And when I think of these BS systems that we all have to deal with, right? I'm not changing my nose. I feel a connection to my nose for that reason. When you watch those kids' films, how do the villains look? Like, looking back at things as an adult, I'm like, damn. We are encouraged to view people in a very particular way based on how they look. Particularly for people that have big noses, it's seen as undesirable because of, in part, from a black woman who grew up in a British context perspective, European colonialism.